haven't felt this uncomfortable in a long time. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. I have that effect on people, Heidi. Welcome to Kira Gets Real Estate. I am Kira Witherwax, and today I'm very excited to share with you. We have a special guest, Heidi Fortsch, with Dirty Girl Coaching. So Heidi specializes in life and death coaching. She works with clients to set personally meaningful goals, take action, and create lives that are authentic to them on a deep heart and soul level. So ultimately, they can die with zero regrets. Heidi's ideal clients are entrepreneurs and artists because they make life better for everyone. Heidi has been coaching since 2017 and is trained in ontological coaching style that focuses on the idea of being and how we choose to be and show up in our day-to-day lives. So I personally have worked with Heidi as kind of a business coach, but obviously she does life coaching in all aspects. I'm really excited to have her here to talk about some of the big decisions people are making in life, but specifically in real estate, and how you can walk through those and really have the best outcome that you want. So Heidi, welcome. Hi, Heidi. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited to kind of talk this all through with you and unpack it for our listeners and our viewers. I think it's going to be super helpful for them. If you could maybe just start by giving us a little bit about decision making in general and kind of unpack that for us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kira. I'm so excited to be here. Well, I always ask folks about what their standard decision-making process is. Do they know what that is? For big decisions or small decisions, how do you buy a car? You go with your gut? Do you make a list? How do you do that? So I think buying a house could be the same.
So that's interesting because when I'm working with a buyer trying to make a decision about what to offer, for example, on a house, often they will ask me and I explain that I can't tell you what to offer. That is definitely a decision you have to make because you have to live with it. But I can give them data, right? So I can give them information to make a decision, to help them make a decision. I can tell them what I think it's worth in this market or what someone may pay for that house in this market. Doesn't mean it has to be them. But then I encourage them to think about how they will feel if they make an offer and win. Will they feel disappointed because they offered too much? Because, sometimes people get competitive and they're like, well, I just want to win. Well, does winning feel good at the end of the day? Because if not, you don't want to offer that. You only want to make an offer that you're happy about if you win. But the same goes for the other end of it. If you think about, well, I don't want to pay too much, I'm only going to offer this. That's fine if that's where you're comfortable. But if somebody else offers more and you lose, will you be like, okay, I didn't want it for more than that anyway? That's the perfect feeling to have in that scenario. But if you would feel like, well, man, I would have offered 5,000 more. I think it's important in that situation to think about how you would feel with the outcome.
Absolutely. I think with any decision, I want to always have a full body yes sort of feeling with a lot of decisions, but a neutral, flat kind of feeling within your body and in your brain. So you're not faced with a bunch of regret or kind of feeling tenuous or unsure of your decision. It's probably the best option. Flat, neutral.
So Heidi, I know one thing that you talk about is making sure you have the right folks in the decision-making process. Can you extrapolate a little more on that?
Absolutely. Part of the decision-making process, some decisions you're going to make on your own, and then others, there are other people involved. So in this case, in buying a home or selling a home, your real estate team is really important. But then who else? Is there a spouse or a life partner, parents, just a nosy neighbor that's got a lot of opinions? Who is actually involved in this decision-making? And are they the right people? That's always a big question.
Definitely. And I think, certainly it's more simple when the people buying the property or selling the property are the ones completely making the decision on their own. From a logistics standpoint, maybe they don't feel so. Maybe they would rather have more opinions. I don't know. But it does get a little more complicated if you have maybe a relative that is financially involved in this situation. Maybe they gifted you money or maybe it's a family property. I'm sure that can make things a little more complicated. They maybe have an interest to some degree, but aren't the ones who have to live your life with the decision made.
Exactly. Whose decision is this? That leads me to a whole bunch of other questions about, are you making this decision from a younger version of yourself or a future version, your past or your future? Are you making this decision out of, you mentioned family property or having other people involved? Are you making this decision out of obligation? Is this decision going to lead you to a sense of freedom? There's so many questions.
I think that can be where someone like you comes in to assist and not certainly not make a decision for someone, but help them sort through all of that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I love helping clients make big, life-changing, juicy decisions. How fun is that?
Yes. I agree. I get to be part of somebody's, generally one of the biggest financial decisions of their lives. And it is really an exciting, challenging, wonderful thing to get to be a part of. In terms of, who is involved in the decision making process, I think in the real estate world, it's important to have those discussions early on. If there are people who maybe feel like they have a say and maybe other people that think they don't, it's something that you want to be clear about as early in the game as possible. I know, from just a legal standpoint and our disclosures, we have to find out who is the decision maker, who is actually signing the contract. But that isn't always the only people involved in the decision making. So we can only work with the information that we're given, and that makes it more challenging. The earlier those conversations can be had, certainly the better. Something that I've heard you say that I think is such an interesting sort of proposition that in this life, so many of us assume there has to be a right answer. I've heard you say, what if there is not a right or wrong choice? So if you could kind of go over that theory with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, we're looking for the right or the wrong choice, and that there is somehow a right or a wrong choice. And certainly there are decisions that involve a right or a wrong choice. Of course. Of course. I don't want to lead anyone down that wrong path that deciding to cook meth in your basement is a good idea. No,
We didn't say that was a good idea for the
no.
record.
But what if there was no right or wrong decision in buying a house? And this really leads us to the idea that you have to have a strong enough team and a strong enough sense of self that you're going to be okay, even if you've made a choice that doesn't work out the way you thought it would work out. Right. So that trust in ourselves to recover. If we made a choice that we thought at the time was going to work out and it just didn't, this is important. So, what if there
Yeah,
wasn't? What if there wasn't a right or a wrong decision?
that. And I think there are so few choices in life and then certainly in real estate that can't be undone. And maybe not undone, but that can't be turned to a different direction at any point if needed. Can't be adjusted. That's the right word. We're like looking for your next best step. You may get into a house and 2 years go, this was a terrible idea, but that doesn't mean you made a wrong decision. You still made the decision the best you could with what you had at the time, and life just changes all the time. I
Right.
met with a buyer this morning actually, and he said that, he had been thinking of it as like, this is going to be my house for the next 30 years. And he said just recently he sort of changed his thinking to, okay, this is my starting point. And that has really helped him in, first of all, seeing options maybe where he wouldn't have before. And also just, I think, allowing himself the flexibility to not make a perfect choice. And I said, most buyers say this is our forever home. And then most buyers move in 5 to 7 years. So it doesn't need to be your forever home, and make it your next best choice. And that's all any of us can do.
Absolutely. My own coach is always asking me, what's the next right step?
Hmm.
So, what is the next right step? And it doesn't have to be, like you said, does not have to be your forever home. Things change constantly. And you don't need to beat yourself up or punish yourself for having your life change.
They say that, the one thing that's constant is change. So here we are.
Here we are.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the conditions of satisfaction.
One of my favorite things to do with a client when they are faced with a decision or a change in their life is coming up with a list of conditions of satisfaction. It's just that. It is the conditions of a situation that will satisfy us. And I encourage people to go beyond just being satisfied, but ecstatic. What are the conditions that are going to just have you over the moon? So if you are in the market to buy or sell a home, what are the conditions? What do you want to pay, or what do you want to receive for the sale of that home? If you're looking to buy, how many bedrooms? Is there a pool? What's the neighborhood like? On and on and on, as detailed as you can get. And I always want clients to not just have the check the boxes, but how does this make you feel? How is it going to feel to have an extra bedroom where your friends or family could come and stay with you, or not? Right? Or that garage that you have, kind of been dreaming about, or a neighborhood where you can walk and visit your library, or whatever. All of those things, that lifestyle that you want to have, make that list. It makes it easier as you're buying a property to say, oh, this is not it. And it can really narrow that decision-making process. Similarly, if you're selling a property, to say, these are the conditions. It's, writing it down, making it very clear what you're looking for.
I think that's great. And I think it's important, especially with buyers. I think, when we first meet, it is very much like, okay, I want 3 bedrooms. I want an acre of land, or whatever the case may be. And the more we work through the process and see houses, that list changes and evolves. And it gets deeper, right? Because 3 bedrooms is one thing, but somebody's saying, well, I need a room for my 1-year-old, and I need a room for my 5-year-old, and they cannot be close together. Or I need a space for my office, and they picture it as a bedroom, but maybe it's the sunroom where they're overlooking the backyard. As they start to picture themselves more in homes, it's sort of like their idea of it rounds out more of like, well, I want a space where friends can come over and we cook dinner together in the kitchen and there's plenty of room to hang out. Like, as they picture themselves in spaces, you get a little clearer on what those conditions of satisfaction really are. For sellers, I think, at first they assume that the right answer is, I want the most money, but there's no right answer. Often people are selling homes because of a life change, and that can mean I want to be able to move as quickly as possible, or that can mean I want to have as few showings as possible, or it can mean I need somebody that can close in 10 months versus wants to close right now. It isn't always what is the highest offer. And I think it's important to look at it, like you said, a little more holistically about what makes this the best case scenario for that particular person. So I know you mentioned concept that I think is empowering, really, of not necessarily having a right answer or a wrong answer. That can be very scary for people, but I love how you said it's so important that you are able to trust yourself, because that's that sense of, no matter what happens, I will be okay. I absolutely love that. And one of the situations that I come across fairly often in real estate life is sometimes I will have somebody say, we'd like to upsize, we'd like to downsize, we'd like to get more land, whatever the case may be. They'd like to move, but they have a house to sell, which puts them generally in a good financial position because they tend to have equity in the property they need to sell. But most people can't or don't want to have 2 mortgages. And so they ask about the possibility of buying a house when you have one to sell first. And it, in my opinion, depends so much on the person. There are many ways to do it, but the worst case is doing it and not being able to sleep at night. And so that's what I always tell people. I can tell you the strongest way to make an offer, and that is to sell your house first, know exactly what you have, and then make an offer not contingent on a sale. That's the strongest. However, that means being homeless for a little bit. And that makes most people uncomfortable. Most people do not choose that option, and that is absolutely fine. I do occasionally have people that are like, our plan is to move in with our in-laws for a few months, and we're going to work this out. We want to be out of the house for photos, whatever the case may be. Like, sometimes people come to me with that plan, and that's great. They're comfortable with it, and that's a great plan. More often, people are like, no, I really don't want to sell unless I find the house I want. And especially in this market where there just aren't a lot of houses and theirs is likely to sell fairly quickly, often what we'll do is get all the photos ready, get everything ready to go, but not list their house until they find one they want. The challenge with that is then they're making an offer contingent on a sale. So it's not going to be as strong if you are competing against other buyers. And therefore, you may be paying a little more in order to get in the house that you want. So if that's something that is more comfortable to you, that's an option as well. And sometimes well, I guess they're sellers and buyers, would be interested in listing their house right away and looking at the same time and hoping that it all comes together. And I mean, I joke, but honestly, it usually does. It really often does have a way of like working out, but some people that absolutely terrifies them. And so there's not a right way to do it. All of them have risks. All of them are a little scary. All of them have great benefits. And so I try to explain the options to them. I don't know if you have any thoughts on how I could explain that better, or if you want to give your 2 cents in that, I would love that. I know not that long ago you were making a decision on whether or not to sell a property. I don't know if you're willing to get a little personal, but if you want to give us the overall gist of kind of your decision making process, I think that would be helpful for people.
Absolutely. Sure. I did sell a property just recently, and it was a rental property that I'd lived in for many years. And I moved and then rented both units. And after 25 years of being a landlord, I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. God bless all the landlords out there. It's a tough thing. And I found myself, I wish I'd made the decision in a more graceful way. I think that I probably waited until I was so tired of dealing with tenant questions and the responsibility that comes along with being a landlord that I was like, that's it. So, um, and I suppose I could have waited to make that decision about selling until I was really like not being who I wanted to be about it. And I feel like I was right there at the point when I needed to sell. It's a whole funny thing. We can talk about decision making, and then when it comes right down to it, it's going to be uncomfortable. Like,
Yeah.
there's probably no, like I said, no graceful way to do it. No right or wrong choice. I could have hung on to that property and continued to hate every moment of it.
Your income, but yes.
Yeah, of course there's income, but then there's the responsibility that the landlord has when tenants decide to not be responsible.
Of course.
So, yeah, the decision became very clear as I didn't make the decision, as I sat on it. Then all of a sudden it was a very clear, this is what we're going to do. And, uh, so I don't think we have to make those snap decisions, and we don't have to know immediately what the right choice is. We can sit in the discomfort of a situation for quite a while until it becomes really clear what our next right step is. Um, and then I completely forgot your question.
That was it. I mean, I just wanted to hear your experience. I mean, so Heidi, I would say if you were my client, I would say, think about how you'll feel if you know no one is ever going to call you with an issue on your duplex. Like, right? Do you just feel relief? Like, and now you have that. So yay, right decision for you.
There's been zero regret.
There, that's awesome.
Zero regret. There has been a lot of relief that I don't have those calls to say the toilet's not flushing or whatever crazy thing is happening. And I'm not feeling nearly the pressure that I thought I might without the rental income. So
One.
that's a plus. But
Yeah.
I really trusted that I didn't want to do this anymore, and I was going to be able to make up the difference in the income. However, magically.
Right. Yes, it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Great decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think what also might be interesting, I was surprised by this, is the day of the closing when I didn't actually have to be at the closing. There was a lot of there was a letdown. There was sort of I
Okay.
expected there to be a lot of excitement, like celebration. And instead I felt a lot of nothing. a lot of, mixed emotions about the sale, and I don't think that that was, like, probably unusual, and I don't think there was anything
Yes.
wrong with it, but it's probably worth mentioning this to people that you don't need to feel like a big celebration has to happen. I took a nap.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I feel like especially that you're saying you absolutely think it was the right decision for you and that you felt that way is so important because
Yeah,
it is so normal to have mixed emotions even when you made the right step for you.
of course.
I don't think any big decision is 100% happiness or relief or frustration or disappointment. It's all a lot of things.
Absolutely. Yes, and it was a lot of things for me. And I had a nap and I got on with it, and the celebration happened, later on when I was feeling more like, "Oh, yeah, it's
This
all
really
gonna
happened.
be it really happened, and it's all going to be okay."
Yeah, wonderful.
Best choice. Yeah,
And I think, lots of times I'm working with sellers that maybe they have lived in the home for 20 years and raised their kids there. There's a lot of emotional attachment or they're selling the house that was their parents that, they grew up in the house. Or there's often a really, really big emotional tie to a property. So it's perfectly normal that even if you get the price you were looking for and the terms you were looking for and everything that you were hoping for, it's going to be, um, a little bit of a emotional mixed bag, so to speak. And, I always tell people the memories go with you. You can sell the property. That everything that is emotional about it comes with you. And I think, it's an interesting career in that people think it's about houses and it has very little to do with houses. It's all about the people, which I love.
absolutely. That's why you're so good at this.
Thank you. Well, is there anything else you would like to share with people today?
I think that if you're considering, like, selling a property, making this huge decision, like, take the leap. Like, how exciting. Right? And making those decisions from a place of, like, excitement and what's the next stage of your life going to feel like and be like? This is a fun time. So, leap.
Well, and I think often people are selling a house because of what is coming next. And I mean, sometimes that's based on something happening in their lives that they have no control over. Sometimes they do, but oftentimes it's moving them towards the thing they want. And so I think that's a great point, like to think about what's next, right? Like don't focus necessarily on, oh, I have to sell this house. That wasn't really my plan, or I didn't really want to do that, or I'm going to miss it, or I'm going to miss my neighbors. Think about like, ooh, this new exciting job in Arizona. I want this. Or, I'm getting to move to this house closer to my grandkids or whatever the exciting next step is. That can be a really good focus point to help you decide if this is a good choice for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You've got this. Trust yourself.
Right. Absolutely. No one can decide for you, but we're here to support you. Thank you so much for being here today, Heidi. We really appreciate your time and expertise. And I hope that you have a great week and we will be talking soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me, Kira. It was so much fun.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Heidi. That was really fantastic. I think there was a lot of great information for our viewers and listeners. I know I always learn something and it always helps me as I'm helping to walk people through this sort of process. I actually was watching something the other day and the woman on it said, I've decided in my life now if I would have to rush, it's a no. And that really struck me because I do think in our lives, we are always trying to like say yes and like shove in one more thing, right? Or make a decision quickly. And obviously, some things need to be made quickly, right? If your child is running into the road, you're going to stop them. You're not going to say, well, I would have to rush. So it's a no. There are emergencies, of course, and urgent things. But there are also things that don't have to be urgent and don't have to be emergencies. And it's interesting. I actually had a client who, their boundary for themselves, it was a couple, they were buying a property together for their primary residence. And their boundary was we are going to sleep on it. Any decision. We're not going to choose to buy a house without taking time to have at least one overnight to process, to consider it, and make a decision. And sometimes we were in positions where there were multiple offers, and the seller said, we need everybody's decision by 5 o'clock tonight. And they said, thank you very much. We understand. But that's a no for us then, because our boundary is we need at least overnight to think about it. And I think that was just very wise of them to know themselves. They weren't upset with the sellers for having a shorter time frame. That's their choice. They just knew for themselves, in order to feel good about it and have it be their next best step, that they needed that time to process. And I just felt like, wow, you really know yourselves well. And that's a good boundary to have for you then, if that's the case. So that is my new motto. If I have to rush, it's a no. So I hope you all have a fantastic week. Again, I'm Kira Witherwax with the Kira Witherwax team at Remax North Country. If you have any real estate questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. So on my website, which is kirawitherwax.com, there is a spot to send your questions in. We won't call you out on here. We'll just answer them. And we hope to get more interactive and have people ask us questions so that we can answer them for you here. There's also my podcast is on the website if you would like to watch it more. And certainly the blog, which has a lot of great information for buyers and sellers. So I hope you all have a fantastic month. Take care and be well.